Ready to go back to the Upside Down? The first volume of Stranger Things Season 5 has arrived at last, and we've got a few thoughts about that ending. Unless you've been living in a nightmarish parallel reality for the last 10 years, you probably have at least a vague idea of what Stranger Things is all about. So we'll spare you this season's 1 to 4 recap and get right into the good stuff.
This is going to be beautiful.
After a brief flashback to 1983 and an encounter with some de-aging CGI that's scarier than anything we've seen in the show thus far, Stranger Things Season 5 picks up more or less where Season 4 ended. The town of Hawkins has been carved in two by a now-repaired rift to the Upside Down, prompting our intrepid heroes to take the fight to Vecna and put a stop to his hijinks once and for all.
It's coming. It's coming for them.
Now, they more or less completely failed to do this over the course of Season 5's first 4 episodes. Although, to be fair to them, we're clearly a lot closer to the final showdown than ever before. Hopper and Joyce are leading D&D-style crawls into the Upside Down. The kids are having a blast, torturing poor defenseless Demogorgons, and Eleven is trying her darndest to really nail that Rey Skywalker impression. Better watch out, Henry Creel. The good folk of Hawkins, USA are a-comin'. By the time Sorcerer rolls around, events in Hawkins and elsewhere seem to be coming to a head. The episode is broadly split into 4 plot threads: Joyce and the kids' great escape break-in to the military base, Holly and Max's adventures in Vecna's memories, Eleven and Hopper's break-in to the parallel military base, and the rest of the gang's brief and bumpy road trip through the Upside Down. Towards the end of the episode, Eleven's plan to kill Vecna hits something of a snag when it turns out that Vecna isn't inside the Upside Down military base after all. Instead, the being she's been sensing in that secret room is dun-dun-dun! Callie. You know, number 8. From the superhero punk story arc everyone collectively chose to forget all the way back in Season 2. Anyone? No? Okay, well things get a lot more shooty elsewhere, as a veritable army of Demogorgons turns up in the real-world Hawkins to take on the military. Soon enough, Vecna himself appears. He reveals a few tasty details about his motivations so far.
Some minds, it turns out, simply do not belong in this world.
Before, kinda just strolling away. The episode then wraps up with a much more consequential reveal. For some reason or another, Will Byers has magic mind powers. After drawing strength from an earlier episode with Robin, Will uses his newfound abilities to kill off the attacking Demogorgons, saving his friends and giving him a mild nosebleed, which by this point has more or less become the show's mascot medical condition. The emergence of Will's powers is by far the most important moment in the first half of Stranger Things' 5th season. A real full-circle moment, considering this is a kid whose disappearance kicked things off all those years ago. The cliffhanger of Sorcerer changes the game not only for Will himself, but also for Vecna, the Upside Down, and the whole town of Hawkins. Obviously, since Will's powers only show up in the final moments of Volume 1's final episode, we don't know much else about them right now. That said, it's a safe bet that they've got something to do with Will's connection to Vecna, which in turn makes him a kind of offshoot of Eleven's own powers, hence the neat parallel of Will's bleeding nose. It's worth noting, however, that we've only ever seen Elle disintegrate a single Demogorgon. Will's ability to control and destroy many at once actually seems to be a considerable step up on her powers. This all bears the question then, what comes next for Will? It's hard to say how his powers stack up against Vecna's, but we can probably assume that the big bad of the Upside Down won't be best pleased to hear that his victim can Thanos snap away an army of Demogorgons with a single thought. Is this all a setup for Season 5's final showdown? Could we see Will actually use the Demogorgons against Vecna? And who would win in a 3-way fight between Will, Vecna, and Eleven? Your guess is as good as ours. If Will Byers is a great lever of Sorcerer, then the story Robin tells him halfway through the episode is his fulcrum. As they explore the underground tunnels leading to the Hawkins military base, Robin speaks to Will about a crush she once had on a girl named Tammy.
It was right then and there that I knew she was the one. That with Tammy, I would finally be able to be myself.
As it turned out though, Tammy was in love with Steve, a revelation that broke Robin's heart. Yet this tale of unrequited love led Robin to a better place after all, as she came to find self-acceptance in some old home movies.
I felt so free. It's like I could fly, you know? Like I could finally be
Robin.
This is a genuinely lovely moment among all the madness of the Volume 1 finale, and it works on two key levels. Firstly, it acts as kind of a thesis statement for Stranger Things as a whole. A troubled youth finds joy in the power of childhood nostalgia, and quietly suggests that we may get a happy ending to this whole story after all. But there's something else at work here too. Aside from Will, Robin is the show's most overtly LGBTQ character, and her doomed crush on Tammy is a clear parallel with Will's unrequited love for Mike. It's not a coincidence Will draws on Robin's story to use his powers at the end of Sorcerer either. Essentially, this is a moment in which a young gay kid overcomes his fears, finding strength in who he is and becoming, in Robin's words, free. Credit where credit's due, it's pretty remarkable that one of the world's biggest TV shows would balance its climax on something like that. Eleven has always been one of the most enigmatic characters in Stranger Things, and while we now know basically everything we need to know about her origins, there's still the matter of her future to clear up. We get the clearest hint about this in The Crawl, when Elle sits down with Mike to fantasize about life after Vecna.
In my campaigns, if the party wins, then they all live happily ever after.
By the time Sorcerer rolls around, however, you can't help but wonder how far Eleven's gonna have to go before she gets that happy ending. Her plotline with Hopper is much darker and a little weirder than the others. Among other things, Elle uses her powers to get inside a soldier's head, snaps another soldier's neck, and flouts nearly every rule about the safe use of scissors. This is all done to pursue a vendetta against Vecna that's bordering on Moby Dick levels of obsessiveness, and that's saying nothing of the re-emergence of Carly, who was hardly a calming influence on Elle back in Season 2. Now, we're not saying that Elle and Mike won't get to walk off into the sunset, or waterfall, or whatever at the end of the series finale, but we've got a long way to go until then, and it stands to reason that things are gonna get a lot darker for everyone's favorite little science experiment before then. Henry Creel is the linchpin of the Stranger Things story. He's Eleven's nemesis and Will's childhood tormentor, as well as the gravest threat Hawkins and the world has ever known. Heck, there's a reason they made a whole stage show about him. To paraphrase the tagline of a classic work of cinema, Vecna's web connects them all.
It's time for your suffering to end.
By now, we know quite a lot about the life of Henry Creel. We know he used to have a sort of symbiotic relationship with the Mind Flayer, which began after he first traveled to Dimension X in the 1950s. We also know he killed his family and ended up in the quote-unquote care of Dr. Brenner and the Hawkins National Laboratory. And of course, we know that he once asked Eleven to join him in eradicating mankind, before, all this happened. Despite all that though, Vecna's ultimate plan hasn't really become clear, even as we approach the show's final phase. It stands to reason that he still wants to destroy all of humanity, and the youth of Hawkins clearly have some role to play in his grand scheme. His attempts to kidnap 12 children in Season 5 may have something to do with Season 4's reveal that killing kids weakens the connection between our world and the Upside Down. But how is it all supposed to come together? That's a lot harder to say. Perhaps the only thing that is certain is that, in the end, Vecna will lose. After all, his plan relies almost entirely on this appraisal of his victims.
Weak in body and mind.
An appraisal that Will proves wrong pretty much immediately at the end of Sorcerer. So yeah, we can probably assume that Henry Creel's days are numbered. Really, the bigger question is what it will take to finally bring him down. Okay, so let's talk death. Season 5 Volume 1 has one big fake-out in the form of Hopper's not-quite sacrifice to take down not-quite Vecna, which means basically everyone who matters is still alive and kicking when the credits roll on Sorcerer. This means one of two things. Either Stranger Things is going to pull a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 for its 5th season and nobody will die, or something very big and very consequential is coming down the road. We're gonna guess it's the latter, mostly because the TV show that murdered Sean Astin before our very eyes is hardly gonna pull punches in its final chapter. So, who's due to get chopped into tiny pieces by Vecna before the season's out? Well, we know who's not: Hopper. It's vanishingly rare for a show to build up and then fake out a character's death before actually killing that character later on. This is because writers know the limitations of narrative speech and the audience's patience. When you spend valuable tension on a fake out like that, there's little value in putting that same character in mortal danger later on, whether they actually die or not. For that reason, Hopper's probably safe for the rest of the season, but that doesn't mean much for anyone else. Maybe Joyce will give her life to save her son. Maybe Elle will die taking down Vecna. Maybe Steve and Dustin will drive that car right off a ravine in the Upside Down, Thelma and Louise style. At this point, all bets are off. To say that Stranger Things wears its influences on its sleeve would be the understatement of the century. From the get-go, the show proudly drew on pop culture phenomena ranging from Dungeons & Dragons to Carrie to E.T. to The Goonies to Halloween to Close Encounters and many, many, many more. In fact, you could probably argue that Stranger Things has become as famous for its wholehearted love of mid to late 20th century storytelling as it has for its story or characters. No surprise then that Season 5 Volume 1 goes even harder. The D&D influence finally reaches its logical conclusion as the gang literally embarks on a dungeon crawl inside the Upside Down. Meanwhile, the Turbo Trap descends into a full-blown Home Alone send-up. Robin references The Great Escape as the basis for her plan to get inside the military base. A Wrinkle in Time gets referenced repeatedly. Vecna totally has a Pennywise thing going on with that whole Mr. What's-It shtick. And the Duffer Brothers have explicitly stated that the season's many hordes of Demogorgons are influenced by the bold new strides in sci-fi horror that James Cameron made with Aliens. In short, Season 5 appears to be a greatest hits of everything the Duffers love about pop culture, and a tribute to the stories they love most. I expect to see this continue to the next episodes too. Everyone expected the D&D references in Volume 1, but nobody saw Home Alone and The Great Escape coming. Which classic films will become pivotal to the story in Volume 2 and the finale? Platoon? The Shining? Back to the Future? We don't know. Either way though, it's bound to be an absolute blast.